somebody might have followed this plant breeding technique and introduced into the world, which is why a lot of breeding procedures are going on nowadays, right? Semi-dwarf varieties and high-yielding varieties of rice, which are called as Jaya and Ratna rice. And these were developed in India. Brassica. So Brassica is nothing but all these cabbage, the cauliflower, all that comes under the Brassicaceae member. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on chapter 9 of 2nd PUC, that is strategies for enhancement in food production. I'm Dr. Divya, biology faculty, Vidyashram Pre-University College, Mysore, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session of this chapter, we had discussed about plant breeding and why plant breeding is very, very important. And also we had discussed different strategies or techniques that are followed in order to improve the breeding methods and also therefore increase the crop production. In today's session, we shall discuss about the Green Revolution. So Green Revolution is one important concept because we know that India is one of the leading agriculture country, right? Because 62% of the people's income come from agriculture, and not just that, to meet the increasing demand of the people in terms of food, agriculture is one of the main factors that help in satisfying the needs of the people in terms of food, and also it helps to increase the economy of the country as well. And India being one of the biggest agriculture related country, agriculture accounts about 33% to the gross development product of India, and 62% of the population, they depend on this particular farming. And soon after independence, it was very much difficult for the government in order to fulfill or cater to the needs of the people because of the growing population. And in order to provide food for such huge growing population, and also the land area in India which was suitable for cultivation of crops and all was very, very less. So in order to avoid all this problem, they went in for developing new techniques, that is plant breeding techniques and all that, wherein they went in for developing a lot of new varieties of crops which give better yield, which are resistant to diseases and all that, wherein they mainly concentrated on those crops which are giving better yield. And this actually led to the Green Revolution. So in today's session, we shall study what is Green Revolution, and also we shall study what are the different types of crops that have been made in India through plant breeding techniques which were disease resistant, which were high yielding varieties, which were able to withstand the environmental stresses and so on. So we shall concentrate on this in today's session. So to begin with, we shall understand what Green Revolution is. Like if you remember in the previous session, I was talking about fisheries. I talked about a term called as Blue Revolution. That is, aquaculture and pisciculture in India led to Blue Revolution. Likewise, the improvement in the breeding techniques in the plant, therefore, leading to the formation of new or leading to the marketing or commercialization of new products, that is, or new crop products which are of high yielding varieties, led to the Green Revolution. So therefore, the development of several high yielding varieties of wheat and rice. Why did they concentrate on wheat and rice? Because when it goes to North India, the staple food of the people of North India is wheat, right? And when we look into South India, the staple food of the people is rice, right? So that is why they first concentrate on improving the varieties of the wheat and rice somewhere in the mid 1960s. So after independence, in order to fulfill the demands of the growing population in terms of food, they decided to release new varieties, that is high yielding varieties of wheat and rice in the mid 1960s as a result of various plant breeding techniques, which actually led to a drastic increase in the production of food. And now India has so much amount of food that is stored which can be used for several years. So that is the state of India which we are in now. So therefore, India has enough amount of food production now when compared to those days when we had got the independence, and that is because of the contributions given by the plant breeders. We need to thank them, right? And this phase wherein the drastic increase in the food production occurred in India, it is called as the Green Revolution. And among this, they have developed a lot of different varieties of high yielding crops such as corn. So corn is one of the Indian variety, that is, they have developed the hybrid variety of corn, then they have developed hybrid variety of wheat. So in Punjab and all, we get different varieties of wheat now that is available. Or you visit a supermarket, in wheat flour itself, they would have mentioned at the back of the packet, right, different varieties of flours they would have named, that is got from different wheat varieties. And also garden peas. So different varieties of garden peas are also got nowadays. So that is how it led to the production of good quality crops. So next, talking about the Green Revolution, wherein they developed high yielding varieties of wheat and rice. How did it develop? What were the strategies that were followed for that? So during the 1960 to 2000, wheat production increased because of plant breeding and development of new varieties of wheat. The wheat production in a country increased from 11 million tons to 75 million tons, while the production of rice in a country also increased from 35 million tons to 89.5 million tons. So what a drastic increase in the food production. Where we were in 1960, we were able to produce around 11 million tons of wheat, but up in 2000, we were able to produce about 75 million tons of wheat, thanks to the plant breeders who have worked on the fields and toiled in the fields to find out a new variety, which is new varieties of crops which are high yielding. Likewise, rice also in 1960, it was somewhere around 35 million rice produced, but ended up in 2000, it was about 89.5 million tons of rice were produced. And mainly this was because of the better yielding semi-dwarf varieties of rice. So they develop better yielding semi-dwarf varieties of rice. Usually what happens is, whenever we notice in the rice fields and all, if we grow a rice variety which is of a taller rice variety, sometimes in the winter season and all that, or in the rainy season, because of, or especially in the winter season and all that, because of the wind currents, what happens, the rice would fall off on the ground, and that will actually incur a huge loss to the farmers, right? But dwarf variety means dwarf varieties will always be able to withstand the wind current, so that they will stand erect. So if they stand erect, the rice grains will not fall on the ground. Therefore, how much yield has to be got to the farmer? He will get so much of yield during the harvest. So that is why, because of the development of a new dwarf variety of rice and wheat, and also a better yielding variety by the plant breeders, the production of wheat and rice in India rose drastically from 1960 to 2000. And also this was due to the development of semi-dwarf varieties of wheat, and also semi-dwarf varieties and high-yielding varieties of rice, which are called as Jaya and Ratna rice. And these were developed in India. So all this is nothing but Green Revolution. You're creating a revolution wherein you're altering a particular crop into something else in order to cater to the needs of the farmer, or to that particular geographical area in which that crop has to be grown. And not just that, concentrating in fulfilling the demands for food, and also if it is a high yielding variety, it will also bring a great economic improvement in the life of the farmers as well, right? So that all these are because of the plant breeding techniques that are followed. Next, also Green Revolution is actually what led to Green Revolution. So in India, of course, plant breeders, they produce new varieties of wheat and rice, which were semi-dwarf and also high-yielding varieties. But how did the idea of plant breeding actually come? Somebody might have followed this plant breeding technique and introduced into the world, which is why a lot of breeding procedures are going on nowadays, right? So we should thank the Nobel laureate, who is Norman E. Borlaug. So Norman E. Borlaug, who is a scientist at the International Center for Wheat and Maize, improvement in Mexico. He is the first person to have developed the semi-dwarf wheat. So that is how, following his technique of plant breeding, a semi-dwarf wheat was made in India as well. So he was the first person to bring a revolution, which is nothing but green revolution. It is because of his ideas, wherein he developed by crossbreeding techniques or artificial hybridization, he actually developed the dwarf variety of the wheat when he was working at the International Center for Wheat and Maize Improvement in Mexico. And in 1963, after that, in 1963, several varieties of wheats have come into the market, such as there are Sonalika, then Kalyan Sona, which were high yielding. So these varieties were high yielding, they were resistant to a lot of pests and diseases, and this variety, that is Sonalika and Kalyan Sona, were introduced all over the wheat growing belt of India, that is in northern regions of India, Punjab and all there, where wheat is grown more, there it was introduced, and it was a boon to the farmers, right? So the farmers, and also to the economic development of the country, also it was a bull, and to provide satisfaction to the growing population in terms of food, also it was a boon. And also semi-dwarf varieties of rice were also made, such as IR8. So there were many, there is a rice variety which is called as IR8, which was developed at International Rice Research Institute. From that IR8 itself, several semi-dwarf varieties of rice were also developed. It is a simple experiment wherein they go in for cross-breeding, but it is a laborious process because the experiment has to be conducted in the laboratory as well as in the fields on a large scale. For several months or several generations it has to be conducted, and then it has to be released to the market. And not just that, when we go in for plant breeding, it is not enough if the plant produces good yield, but we should also see that that particular plant, say for example, if you do research on wheat variety in Bangalore and give it to the people to grow in Punjab, will it help? No, because the climatic condition, the soil condition, everything is different there. So plant breeder working in any institute in any of the part of a country or any region of the country, they should keep in mind that is, where are they going to release this particular variety, for which people or which farmers are they making this particular variety. So they have to keep in mind the environment, that is soil texture and all that they have to keep in mind, and same thing they have to provide in the laboratory or in the fields in which they are working. So therefore it is a quite laborious and time consuming process, but once it is done, it is of great importance to it improves the farmer's life or economy as well. And I was talking about the IR8 variety of rice, which was actually developed at International Research Institute, that is in Philippines. From this IR8, actually lots of semi-dwarf varieties of rice have been developed by plant breeding techniques, and also it was developed by the Taichung native one, that is was developed from Taiwan. So different varieties of semi-dwarf varieties of rice have been developed from IR8 and Taichung native 1, and these derivatives were introduced in 1966. That is why they call it as, from 1960 actually green revolution started, because high yielding people started to stop growing the wild varieties. So wild varieties, of course, they were resistant to diseases, but their yield was very, very less. So at the end of the day, the farmer also depends on the yield of the crop, right? So imagine in one season of crop growing, if he can produce only 10 tons, and if in a higher variety, if he can produce about, that is say about 40 tons, imagine how his income will increase, right? So that is why it brought about the green revolution. And in 1960 itself, green revolution had started, and the first person to that is Norman Borlaug should be thanked enough, because he was the first person to introduce the breeding techniques to all the other people of the world. So that is why he was awarded the Nobel Prize, that is Norman E. Borlaug. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for that particular cause. So this was about the hybrid varieties of wheat and rice that were produced, which were disease resistant, which were semi-dwarf, and also which were high yielding in nature. Next is about sugarcane. So likewise, even sugarcane was also bred to improve its variety. So sugarcane, that is the common sugarcane, Saccharum barberry, was originally grown in North India, but it had poor sugar content and yield. At the end of the day, the extract of the sugarcane will be taken and sugar will be prepared out of it, right? But here, imagine if that particular sugarcane yields very less sugar, it is a great loss to the farmer, right? So that is when what they did was they decided to go in search of a new variety wherein they underwent plant breeding technique. So here one variety was Saccharum barberry, which was usually grown in North India, and that actually had poor sugar content and the yield was also very less. And one more that is grown in South India, that is called as the tropical canes. So tropical canes, that tropical environment, that is so those sugar canes grown in the tropical environment of South India. So these were called as Saccharum officinarum. So Saccharum officinarum had thicker stems. It had thicker stems and higher sugar content, but it did not grow well in North India. So what did they do? They actually made a cross between two species. So what did they do? Saccharum barberry was growing in, so here Saccharum barberry was growing well in northern parts of India. North India. It had very well adjusted to the climatic conditions of North India, to the soil of North India and all that. Therefore, it was growing in North India. It was well suited to grow in that particular conditions in North India. But this particular Saccharum barberry, it actually had low yield. Of course, can you see if you carefully observe, you can see the sugar cane. It is very slender, just like the thin bamboos that are there. It produced low yield and less sugar. Because yield was low, therefore, the sugar content that was got out of it was very less sugar. And one more, that is Saccharum officinarum. It is grown in South India. South Indian variety. This one, it had high yield. Can you see the difference in the stem size itself of the sugar cane? It had high yield and high sugar. But there is a drastic difference between the environmental conditions of South India, the soil texture in South India when compared to that of North India. So saying that this has high yield and high sugar, can you take it and plant it in North India? It is not possible. It will not grow there, right? So what they did was, what the plant breeders did was, they made a cross between these two. That is, they did crossbreeding techniques wherein they made a cross between Saccharum barberry and Saccharum officinarum. So now we can understand what the progeny will have. The progeny will have high yielding and it will have high sugar content, and also it will thrive in North India as well, because the characters that are needed for this particular plant to thrive to North India would also have entered into the progeny, right? So both the characteristics of, or the dominant characters of these two will enter into the progeny. Therefore, the progeny that was produced, or the new variety that was produced, actually they were able to grow it even in North India as well as in South India as well. So that is how, or in North India. North India is sufficient. They were able to grow in North India because the sugarcane variety that was produced in North India was not a good yielding variety. So what they did, they crossed these two species. They were successfully crossed and they got sugarcane varieties combining both the desirable qualities of the sugar canes that were grown in North India as well as in South India. Therefore, that hybrid variety of sugar cane that they produced by crossing these two varieties, they had different types of qualities such as high yield, then they had thick stems, high sugar content, and also ability to grow in the areas of North India. So that is how the sugarcane revolution in sugarcane actually started. So this is about the sugarcane, how plant breeding technique was used to improvise the sugarcane variety that was grown in North India. Next is millets. Likewise, millets also, different types of millets. We have maize, jowar, bajra, all these are the millets, right? So many hybrid varieties of maize, then jowar, bajra have been developed in India, and hybrid breeding techniques actually have led to the development of several high yielding varieties of these millets which are resistant to water. So millets, they are usually not resistant to water like that of rice, right? Rice can grow well in waterlogged. They need a waterlogged condition for their initial growth, right? But these will not, maize and all that, they won't be able to grow under water stress, be it in waterlogged condition or in the absence of water. So in order to withstand both, the hybrid varieties of maize, jowar and bajra have been developed successfully in India. Next, talking about the different plant breeding that has been done in order to make the crops resistant to pests and insects, make the crops resistant to pathogens, diseases, etc. What are the different crop varieties that were released which were resistant to that is insects, the pathogens and all that we shall see. So plant breeding for disease resistance. So disease resistance means the plant or the crop should produce some compounds which will help the plants to protect itself from the attacking pathogens. So in crops, there are a lot of chemicals which are called as secondary metabolites which actually help the crop to protect itself against certain diseases. Say for example, we have polyphenol oxidase or phenylalanine which is called as POX, then we have lipoxygenase which is called as LOX. Then we have phenylalanine ammonia lyase, that is PAL. So like this chitinase, so like this different compounds will be produced by the plants which will protect piperine. If it is pepper, we have piperine, oleorescence content, all these are the secondary metabolites or the components which actually protect the crops from the pests and the insects. So here, when a pathogen is trying to attack, a pathogen, what is the pathogen? Any fungi, bacteria or virus that is capable of infecting a crop and bringing a disease to that particular crop is called as a pathogen. So any pathogen is trying to attack a particular crop. If that crop is resistant to that particular pathogen, how will it be resistant to that particular pathogen? It will increase the production of these particular compounds that I had mentioned. So, these particular compounds, when it gets increased in the plant body, the pathogen will not be able to enter into the cells of the plant body. So, that is how they protect themselves. So, this is what they do in plant breeding in order to to create a variety that is resistant to disease. They either, in plant breeding technique, what they do is they make a cross between a plant which is resistant to a disease to that of a normal plant, so that the genes in this particular plant will get transferred. So how will the genes get transferred? It is through the pollen grains, right? Because the pollen grains carrying the healthy genes there. So they get transferred into the normal plant which is not resistant to the disease. So that is how they do it. So breeding and development cultivars resistant to disease will also increase the food production. Of course, say for example, we are growing a crop which is not resistant to the disease, but it is high yielding in nature. Then any season, if some pathogens or if any disease comes to that particular crop, what will be the use if the crop is high yielding and not resistant to the disease, right? So that is why we need to make a crop which is disease resistant as well, and not just concentrate on making the crop high yielding in nature. So here also what happens is sometimes we spray a lot of chemicals in order to protect the plants from the diseases. So it is also a problem to the environment, and spraying a lot of chemicals, pesticides and all that is a problem to the human health, because obviously they would have these chemicals will enter into the food product, that is enter into the that is the crops which we consume, right? So it is harmful to the human health, and also it is hazardous to the environment, be it the soil. So these chemicals are harmful to the microbes, good microbes that are present in the soil as well. And also not just that, the farmer, he will have to spend a lot of money in order to spray chemicals to a large acre of land, and it is also a loss to the farmers in terms of economy, right? So to avoid all that, the plant breeders, they will decide to make a crop that is resistant to the disease. So if the plant is resistant to the disease, there is no need for the farmer to spend extra money in order to bring products and spray to the plants in order to protect the plants from the disease, because by birth itself the plants would have incurred the genes or taken in the genes which are resistant to the disease. So that is why. So therefore it will help to reduce the dependency of farmers for the use of fungicides and bactericides. So therefore it is not just it will take care of the plant, but also that is the farmer will not have to spend extra money, nor it will cause any harm to the human beings, whoever is consuming that particular crop. So that is why. So likewise, a lot of diseases are there which actually infects the crops, and for this particular disease, a lot of new varieties or disease resistant varieties have also been developed. So before that, we need to understand some of the diseases of the crop. So brown rust of wheat, it is caused by fungi. Then we have the red rot of sugarcane. Then here is the late blight of potato, which is caused by fungi as well. And then there is black rot of crucifers, which is caused by bacteria. It is a bacterial disease. Then there is this tobacco mosaic disease, which is caused by the virus, that is tobacco mosaic virus. Likewise, there are different diseases. So imagine the farmer will have to spray a lot of chemicals if he has to protect this particular crop. Who will buy such kind of cabbages and all that with lot of spots and all that if it is diseased, right? So it is better to go in for plant breeding, therefore developing new varieties which are resistant to different forms of disease. So here, plant breeding for different disease resistance, there are different methods for breeding for disease resistance. So what are the conventional methods that is the most common method that are followed during plant breeding in order to breed a crop which is resistant to disease? One is hybridization and the other one is the selection method. So there are different steps that are involved in hybridization and selection, which is a technique in crop breeding. So this one you have also studied in Mendelian genetics, artificial hybridization. So you will understand it better. So the different steps are, and also we have studied this when talking about animal husbandry. It is the same thing. Same thing here as well. Here, screening the germplasm for resistant sources. Same thing, what they will do, first thing they will do is choosing the varieties. Once they choose the varieties, in those varieties, they will choose the varieties of which trait they want to pass on to the next generation. That they will choose and keep. They will choose and keep, and they will breed these varieties and all that, and they will create a germplasm of that particular variety. Now in that particular germplasm, they have to choose a best quality one they have to choose, and then they have to go in for the crossbreeding. So first is screening the germplasm. What are they screening for? They have to concentrate on those crops which are resistant to the diseases, because we are creating a crop here which is, or we are doing a plant breeding technique here in such a way that the crop should be resistant to that particular disease, or the next generation crop after plant breeding should be resistant to that particular disease. Next, after screening, and next we have selected a few set of plants which are resistant to a particular disease, then comes the hybridization of the selected parents. After hybridization, they will go in for selection and then evaluation of the hybrids, and then they will go in for testing, and then they will release the new variety. So here again, soon after a hybrid is created, you cannot release the new variety. You have to take it to the field. One round you have to test it, or few generations, up to few generations, maybe around 4 to 6 generations. You'll have to test it in the that is institute's field, or the research or in the fields where the research experiment is going on. Then after that, if you're satisfied with the result, then you have to sow the same set of seeds in a farmer's field and test it there whether it is giving the same kind of result which they had got in the laboratory, whether they have got that or in a closed environmental condition, that they have to see for at least for 3 months, that is at least for 3 cycles or 3 generations they have to test, and then they need to commercialize it as a new variety. So here what they do is, first they will screen for the germplasm, as I've told you. After that they will go in for hybridization. So hybridization, what they will do, they will take a male plant which is disease resistant, then they will take a female plant. So that female plant may be high yielding. So to that female plant which is high yielding, they need to incorporate the characters of this male plant which is disease resistant. So what they will do, in the male plant they will keep the anthers as such and all that, but in the female plant they will remove the anthers to prevent self-pollination. And after removing the anthers, what they do is, from the male plant's anther, that is the plant which is high in disease resistant, from that they will take the pollen grains, they will dust it onto the one more plant which is high yielding but not resistant to the disease, that is female plant. It is called female plant now. Why? Because the anthers have been removed. So they will take the pollen and they will dust the pollen onto this particular female plant, onto the stigma, and they will bag it. Why bagging? Because from somewhere else the pollen grain should not come in the wind and fall on that particular plant, right? So that is why they will go in for bagging. After bagging, they will wait until fertilization occurs, seed setting occurs, they will wait. That thing, this procedure, no, again they will take the seeds and they'll continue this procedure for around 5 to 6 generations. After that, they will get a good set of seeds now, which is hybrid. That seed, they will sow it in their particular farm. That is the research institute's farm itself. They will sow it and they will test there. Again, here also about 4 to 6 generations they will test. Imagine 4 to 6 generation means it will take 4 to 6 years for them to do it. So they will test it, and that set of seeds, if they are satisfied, they will collect, they will take it to the farmer's land. Again, in the farmer's land also, they will give it to the farmers. The farmer should sow it. He should follow the protocol, everything. And they will, these people, the plant breeders will regularly visit the farm. They will check everything and they will do. And they will finally decide, okay, it is fit or suitable for growing in this particular region in a farmer's field. And then they will commercialize. So much technique is actually followed under this particular hybridization and selection process, which is one of the conventional methods of plant breeding to produce hybrid varieties of crops. So next, talking about the different hybrid varieties of crops that have been released which are resistant to diseases. So wheat is the common crop variety. One of the variety is Himgiri. So Himgiri, it is actually resistant to leaf and stripe rust, and also it is resistant to hill bunt diseases. And next, Brassica. So Brassica is nothing but all these cabbage, the cauliflower, all that comes under the Brassicaceae member. The variety is Karandrai. It is called as Karandrai, or it is called as Brassica variety. It is resistant to white rust. So white rust, you might have seen on cabbages, cauliflowers and all that. Lots of white powdery substances, patches that have been formed. It is caused by a fungi. So they are resistant to that particular disease called as white rust. Next is cauliflower, which also comes under the Brassicaceae member. 2 hybrid varieties have been developed in cauliflower. It is Pusa Shubra and Pusa Snowball K1. So these varieties are resistant to black rot and curling of the cauliflower variety, and also same thing. So both of these varieties are resistant to black rot and curling. Next, one more hybrid variety of the crop, that is cowpea. It is called as Pusa Komal. So Pusa Komal is resistant to bacterial blight disease. So Chile, they have released a hybrid variety, that is Pusa Sadabahar. So Pusa Sadabahar is resistant to chili mosaic virus, tobacco mosaic virus, and also it is resistant to leaf curl. That is leaf curling. All these occurs because of the viral pathogens or viruses. So they are resistant to all these viruses which cause chili mosaic, tobacco mosaic and leaf curling in that particular plant. So these are the different hybrid varieties that have been developed in India, and it is a boon to the farmers actually, because it greatly minimizes the loss to the farmers and also it increases the economy of the farmers. Why? Because the farmers will not have to spend extra money in order to buy products to prevent these diseases. And also if disease is less, then the yield that the farmer will get also will be of good quality. So that is one. Next here, they also follow one more technique which is called as mutation breeding. So in mutation breeding, here genetic variations are created in that particular plant. A gene can be altered by subjecting that particular gene to chemical mutation or radiation or something. So here, process by which genetic variations are created through changes in the base sequence, that is in the DNA sequence within the genes, resulting in the creation of new character or trait which is not found in the parental type. But in the case of hybridization, the progeny will get the characters from that are there in the parents itself, because the crossing is done between two parents here. Here what they do in genetic mutation is that in the one plant itself, they'll alter the gene. They'll try to alter the gene. That plant will have a character. Say for example, they have made a cross between, a cross between A and B, and one particular progeny C has got. So here the C will undergo mutation. They will cause mutation in this particular C. So mutation subjected to chemical mutation or radiations, various types of radiations and all that, to bring about a mutation in the desired gene. So now when a mutation is brought, now here what happened, the seeds that are formed by this particular plant, say for example, seeds that are formed by this, will not have the qualities of the parents. Why? Because the gene is being altered here because of mutation, right? So that is why here mutation breeding is a process in which genetic variations are created in the plant. What kind of genetic variations? Those characters are brought into that particular plant which do not resemble to that of the parents. So one of the best example is mung bean. So in mung bean, gene mutation was done wherein they made the plant, or they altered the gene in such a way that that plant became resistant to yellow mosaic virus and also to powdery mildew. That is powdery mildew which is caused by a fungi because of the mutations that was brought about in that particular plant gene. So here, resistant to yellow mosaic virus in bindi, that is in lady's finger, or it is also called as okra. In that is one variety, Abelmoschus esculentus. It was transferred from a wild species and resulted in a new variety of, that is Abelmoschus esculentus, which is called as Prabhani Kranti. So they created what they did was they created a mutation in the bindi species wherein it became resistant to yellow mosaic virus. Therefore, a new variety was being created and they named it as Parbani Kranti. So it was called as Parbani Kranti. So that is how mutation. In mutation, what they will do is in that particular plant itself, they'll try to alter the gene or bring about a mutation in that particular gene. They'll not all the whole strand of the DNA or will not get mutated, but they'll concentrate on one particular gene. For this also a lot of work is needed. Why? Because they'll have to find out the gene that is producing the protein that is responsible the plant to not be resistant to a particular disease. So that gene they will identify, they'll mutate it and they'll alter it in such a way that it becomes resistant to that particular disease, and therefore it will get created into a new variety and they will name the variety and they will commercialize. So this is how mutation breeding is done. Next, talking about plant breeding in order to make the crop plants resistant to insects, because we know that insects, they mainly feed on the sap of the leaves, right? So what happens if they start feeding on the sap of the leaf? They will cause a lot of problems to the plants. Not just that, some of the insects, they also act as vectors for carriers of diseases to that particular plant. So in order to avoid all these things, plant breeding technique is followed in order to make the crops resistant to insects. Here also, in the particular plant, usually they are resistant to insects because of their smell. So you might have seen in some of the fields, what they do is, crop fields, in between the plants, rows of plants, they will grow chrysanthemum. So chrysanthemum is In Kannada, it is called as Chendu Hoo. So chrysanthemum, what they do is, or we have Sevanti and all that, right? Chrysanthemum species of plants. So that plant has lot of compounds in them which has the ability to keep the insects away from them. That smell of chrysanthemum is so powerful, right? Or it is so pungent. So likewise, what farmers do is, if they grow these chrysanthemum flowering plants in between the crops, that is rows of crops, because of the smell, the insects will not come and attack their crops. That is what they believe. So it is actually true as well, but also, and on the other hand, it also increases the economy of the farmer. Why? Because chrysanthemum flower also they can sell. It is of great demand, right? As a puja offering and all that, it is of great demand. That is what they do. But sometimes that is not possible, because even the chrysanthemum might get infected by various diseases. So it is better to make the crop plant itself resistant to the insects. So here what they do is, say for example, we have hairy leaves in several plants. So hairy leaves in several plants is associated with resistance to insects. Of course, if the plants have lots of hair, what will happen? The insects will not be able to come and sit on it, because the hairs will be spiny. They will not be able to come and sit on it. They will not be able to penetrate their snout into the plant and extract the sap. So that is why the plant, and that is how the plant wards off the insect, by having hair. So what they can do is, plant breeders, what they do is, they can select a plant or a crop which is having high amount of hairs on the stem, the leaf, which is called as the trichomes, right? Hairs on the stem and the leaf, and they can cross it with a normal plant, and therefore in the resulting progeny, what will happen? These plants will also, the progenies will also have hairy texture in them. So that is how it can be done. The best example that we can take of is the resistant to jassids. So jassids are some insects which actually infect the cotton plant. So you can see jassids here. They usually infect the cotton plants, and cereal leaf beetle that infects the wheat. So you can see the cereal leaf beetle here, which is infecting the leaf. So these, in wheat, actually the solid stems lead to non-preference by the stem sawfly, and smooth-leafed and nectarless cotton varieties do not attract bollworms. So here, what happens here is resistant to jassids in cotton and cereals. So cottons are also hairy in texture. So if a hybrid variety of cotton is created which is hairy in texture, then the jassid insects will not come and sit on that cotton to feed on the sap of the leaf of the cotton. That is cereal leaf beetle, which attacks the wheat as well. And in wheat, the solid stems lead also. Wheats, they have quite a solid stem, which is not a good preference to the insect. So that is why this solid stem in the wheat also makes the insects not to come and feed on that particular plant. And also, especially the sawfly. So the sawfly will not come and attack wheat plants because of the solid stems that they have. And also, say for example, in cotton varieties which are having smooth leaf and which do not produce any nectar, there also the bollworms will not come and sit on it, because they will not get the food that they need. They will not be able to derive that particular food. So therefore, they will not come and attack the cotton. So cotton is made resistant to bollworms, wherein hybrid varieties of cottons have been developed which are having smooth leaves and which do not produce any nectars. The flowers of the cotton do not produce any nectars, because these bollworms actually attack the cotton during the flowering stage. So what they do is, they will attack the cotton and they will lay the eggs inside that. So when the larvae come out, they can feed on the nectar of that. So if nectarless flowers itself is there in the cotton, why will the bollworm come and lay the eggs in that particular flowers, right? So that is how they create a hybrid variety in such ways. And in some of the, that is maize, in some of the maize, what plant breeders have done is, they have created a hybrid variety of maize which is high in aspartic acid content, which is low in nitrogen content, and also low in sugar content. They made it resistant to maize stem borer, because the high aspartic acid content will cause the harm to the stem borer. And not just that, when the wheat variety is low in sugar content, the stem borer will not be interested in feeding on that particular plant. So that is how they develop new varieties by hybridization techniques in order to be resistant to the insects or the insect pests. So here, what are the different steps that have been followed in order to make a plant resistant, or in order to create a hybrid variety of plant which are resistant to the insect? So a lot of breeding methods have been followed for insect pest resistance, which involves the same steps as that I had mentioned in the pathogen, that is disease resistant crop. So what steps are being followed, or previously itself in previous slides when talking about the steps that are followed to create a hybrid variety for disease resistant, the same step is followed here as well. So we'll not talk about it again. So here the same steps are followed, and therefore all the agronomic traits will be incorporated in that particular plant, because it is not enough if we make the plant insect resistant. We also need to make the plant high yielding, and also we need to make the plant, though it is high yielding, we need to improve the quality of that yield as well. So all these will be incorporated to a hybrid crop variety, and they will not just, the plant breeders do not just concentrate on one of the traits here. And sources of resistant genes may also be taken from the cultivating varieties. So here gene technologies can also be followed, wherein what they will do is they isolate a particular gene. Say for example, here we need to produce a insect resistant crop. So say for example, in one particular crop is producing lot of terpenes. So this terpene compound is actually resistant to, or it protects the plants against insects. So what the scientists will do is they will isolate a gene that is actually responsible for producing this terpene from one particular plant or plant of their interest, and they will incorporate into the crop. So in that crop, when that particular gene is incorporated, that crop will also produce a lot of terpenes, and thereby what will happen, that particular crop will also become resistant to the insect. So that is what they do. So sources of resistant genes may also be taken from cultivated varieties, from germplasm collections, either of the crop or wild varieties, because I told you most of the wild varieties are resistant to diseases and all that. So from there, such genes can be collected and it can be incorporated into other varieties so that a new hybrid can be produced. So that is how they create crops or hybrids which are resistant to the insect pests. So there are a lot of crops that have been developed which are resistant, or a lot of hybrid crops that have been developed which are resistant to the insect pests. So the crop which is brassica, that is rapeseed, which is nothing but mustard here. So mustard. So here they have developed a variety called as Pusa Gaurav. So this Pusa Gaurav is actually resistant to aphids. So aphids are small white insect-like creatures which actually attack a lot of crop plants. Next, flat bean. So they developed a hybrid variety of flat bean which is called as Pusa Sem 2 and Pusa Sem 3. So both of these are resistant to jacids, then they're resistant to aphids, and also they're resistant to fruit borer. So what might they do here? They might reduce the sugar content, they might increase content in that particular plant, or they may go in for gene technique wherein they may incorporate a gene which is producing a particular compound that is offering resistant to that particular insect. So all these techniques they might have followed. Next is okra, which is bindi, and they have released a new variety, that is Pusa Savani and Pusa A4. So this variety is resistant to the insect, that is shoot and fruit borer insects they are resistant to. So what all these compounds will do is they'll either reduce the production of certain compound in that particular plant, say for example sugar and all that, so that the insects will not feel like coming and feeding on that particular plant. So when it is no longer a food for that particular insect, why will the insect come there, right? So that is how it can be done. Or they can create a hybrid in such a way that it produces some compounds in that particular plant itself which will keep the insects away from it. So all these are different hybrid varieties which have been developed which are resistant to the insect pests. So next we shall see plant breeding for improving the quality of the food. So not just producing high yield is sufficient. The high yield, even though it is produced, the quality of the grain or the cereal should be of very high, right? So what are the different plant breeding techniques? We shall see. So 3 billion people throughout the world, they suffer from malnutrition, right? So that is why the golden rice was created. So golden rice was created to save the malnourished kids of Africa. So what did they do? They used a vector wherein they isolated the gene from the daffodil plant, the gene that is responsible for the production of vitamin A. They isolated that and they incorporated into the rice variety. Therefore, and that rice variety was supplied to the malnourished children of the African country. So therefore, they got enough amount of vitamin A when they had the rice, because rice is also a staple of Africa. So that is why. So 3 billion people, they suffer from micronutrient deficiency, protein, vitamin deficiencies, or also because of the hunger. And why? Because they are not able to, their economic condition is not good enough to buy food. So that is buy enough fruits, vegetables, legumes, fish and meat. So fruits, vegetables and all that is of high costly now. We all know that nowadays it is of the cost has soared to the heights, right? So here, so what happens? So sometimes, so what scientists or plant breeders do is the same thing or the same compounds or the vitamins, minerals, nutrients and all that that are present in the fruits, vegetables and all that, they try to incorporate it into the food grains. So that grains are low of cost and also the quantity got is very much, so that you can at least keep the grains for a month and have it. But can you do that with the fruits and vegetables with that high cost, and also when we are not able to afford to buy that, right? So in such conditions, what, and also the government can give such grains with subsidies and all that to the that is poor people. So likewise, if such hybrid varieties are created wherein a lot of mineral nutrients, then vitamins and all that, proteins and all that are taken in from vegetables, fruits, meat, everything, and incorporated into the cereal grains, that is rice, wheat and all that. Therefore, when people, that is malnourished people, consume them, they will also get enough amount of the nutrients. And also a lot of problem is being created because of the diets lacking essential micronutrients, especially micronutrients such as iron, vitamin A, iodine and zinc. And this also increases the risk of various diseases. Say for example, vitamin A deficiency can lead to that is blindness, that or loss of night vision, or it can lead to color blindness, right? And also iodine deficiency in iodine can lead to goiter. So zinc, if zinc deficiency is there, it can also lead to a lot of muscular and nervous system disorders. So that is why in order, and also all these deficiencies will reduce the lifespan and also reduce the mental abilities of the people. So that is why a lot of breeding technique should be followed, wherein they can not only increase the yield of that particular crop but also increase the quality of that particular yield, wherein in that particular yield itself lot of nutrients and vitamins and minerals are there, so that when the people consume it, they get enough amount of nutrients, even though if they don't consume the costly vegetables, the fruits, fish and meat. Because every time there are people for whom even it is difficult to get a meal, one meal a day, right? It is difficult. So if government plans to supply such food grains at least 1 month, they can live, wherein with all the nutrients they will get, so that nobody in the country or a nation will be malnourished. So that is how it is important for plant breeders to concentrate on developing plants which are also of good quality, that is filled with nutrients, minerals and all that, especially cereals which are filled with all these things, so that the people will not have to depend on all the fruits, vegetables, legumes, fish, meat and all that. So next, one more term that we need to learn here is biofortification. So what is biofortification? So breeding crops with higher levels of vitamins, minerals or higher protein and healthy fat contents is called as biofortification. So far we had learnt about the term plant breeding. When plant breeding is done in concentrating on improving that particular crop yield in terms of nutrition, vitamins, minerals, and high protein content, all that it is, and also healthy fat content, it is called as the biofortification. And what are the objectives of improving the crops in terms of biofortification? It is improve the protein content and quality of that particular crop, then improve the oil content and quality, and also improve the vitamin content in that particular crop, and also improve the micronutrient and mineral content. So if all these objectives are followed in that particular crop, then it is said to be biofortified, or it is called as biofortification. So this is about biofortification. So biofortification was developed by Indian Agricultural Research Institute, which is located in New Delhi. That is Indian Agricultural Research Institute located in New Delhi. So they mainly concentrated on creating crop varieties or cereal varieties which are of good quality, having all the minerals and nutrients in that. Because we get different types, like say for example, nowadays in the supermarket when you buy, you have, if you take some dals or pulses, if you take and read the back label, we'll find that it is filled with zinc, filled with manganese, iron, like that it will be written, right? So all that is nothing but fortified. So in the crop, through breeding technique, they have incorporated all these in that particular crop. So that is nothing but biofortification. So the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, that is there in New Delhi, have released several vegetable crops that have been biofortified. That are rich in lot of minerals and vitamins, and they have also released certain varieties of carrots, spinach, pumpkin, which are rich in vitamin A, and they have released varieties such as bitter gourd, batua, mustard, tomato, etc., which are rich in vitamin C, and they have also released varieties of beans which are rich in calcium and proteins and iron also, and they have that is spinach and batua varieties have also been released which are rich in iron and calcium, and also they have released protein rich beans and such as broad beans, the lub beans, French beans. Nowadays in the market we get French strings, the beans which are called as French string beans. So they are nothing but they have lots of protein in them. So if you go to any supermarket, you will find a variety of bean which is called as French beans, French string beans, and also a lot of improved garden pea variety which are rich in proteins and also which are rich in iron and calcium. So these are the different varieties of crops or which have been biofortified. That is, the mineral, vitamins and all that content in them have been increased. And one such contribution has been done by the Indian Agricultural Research Institute. So this was about today's session, wherein we completely understood about the plant breeding techniques that have been followed, especially the hybridization techniques that have been followed in order to improve the yield of the crop and also to make the crop resistant to disease, resistant to insect pests, and not just that, also plant breeders concentrating on improving the quality of the yield as well, wherein that particular yield is rich in, or that particular crop is rich in minerals, nutrients, fats, oils and so on. So I hope you understood this session well. In the coming session, that is the last session of this particular chapter, so we shall discuss about the single cell protein. So what are the single cell proteins, and also how tissue culture has been followed in order to improvise the crop plants. All that we shall study in the coming session. So we shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.